Cool. Just make
Yeah,
sure. I always forget.
got it. Yes. Okay. So on my end, it says it's recording. Does it say that for you?
No.
Let me see. Yeah, it says it's
Record.
recording. Give me a thumbs up if it says if it did that like. Oh, now it's doing it. Okay.
Okay.
My Wi-Fi is a little sketchy tonight, so we'll hopefully we're all good for the whole time we're together. But awesome. Well, I'm so glad. Yay, Shannon, thank you. Oh, you're in Wyoming. That's awesome. The beautiful area. Sweet. All right. Well, cool. Let's get started. Um, so Becky came up with this name and I really like it. Small changes, big impacts. We're going to be normalizing student accommodations in the world language classroom. And yeah, it's something it's a topic that's near and dear to our heart. We've also submitted this to ACTFL, so fingers crossed, hopefully we get into that also. So this is kind of like our trial run, and any feedback that you have, we welcome. So let's go to the next slide. All right,
Oh,
Becky, take it
sorry, I
away.
forgot this is me. My
Yeah,
bad.
that's
Okay, thank you.
okay.
So we wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. As we've been seeing today, we feel it's very important to acknowledge the fact that we are occupying Indigenous land. So we are both from Montana and New Hampshire, and Kristen, who is in Montana, is in an area that it was inhabited by the tribes of the Blackfoot, Crow, Salish, and Cheyenne. I'm in New Hampshire, where the Abenaki and Abenaki and Dahlin Confederacy were situated. So we do encourage you to take time to research the native peoples who were in your land before they were forced off of their land. And we encourage you to do research and learn more and lift up the peoples that do still inhabit the places in which you live. So cool.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. Oh, and the last part I added at the end, so Becky didn't know about this probably,
Ooh.
but I there's a local organization in Montana that talks about the fact that when they do a land acknowledgement, they always recognize that generational wealth was built, the wealth of the nation was built upon the backs of enslaved people. So again,
Yeah.
we need to keep educating ourselves, and as Ben so wisely shared, keep supporting those people who are, that are have been put at a massive disadvantage. So yeah. Okay. So anywho, this is you too. Yay.
Yay. So a bit about me. My name is Becky. I currently teach Spanish through World Language Initiative. I am mostly a stay-at-home mom these days. Previously, I've taught high school, I've taught middle school, I've taught elementary, I've taught adult learners, I've taught senior citizens. So I've taught all different ages. And I myself was diagnosed with a generalized anxiety disorder in 2017. Later, was diagnosed with depression. I myself, my anxiety forced me to take time off, quit my job, begin therapy, medication. And as I was able to reestablish my career as an educator, I really wanted to make sure that others understood what it is like to be an individual with an anxiety disorder so that we can help create safe, comfortable learning spaces for our students. So since 2018, I've been teaching, learning, speaking, presenting, and training on creative ways to support all students, and specifically those students with anxiety and depression in the classroom. And given all of the changes that have been happening in our society over the past few years, I feel like this is even more salient of a topic. So I'm excited that we were able to present today on this.
Awesome. Thank you. So a little bit about me, similar situation. I was I teach Spanish with all ages. I started with preschoolers, and now I teach mostly middle schoolers, but I also have taught high school. I teach adult classes currently and elementary education level classes as well. And yes, and this is my 14th year of teaching, whoop whoop. And I was diagnosed with a learning disability in 8th grade, as you can read. And I really, really felt strongly at a young age, like probably in 3rd grade, that I knew I didn't want to have teachers that made me, I didn't want kids to have to experience what I had experienced, specifically in 3rd grade. that feeling of overwhelm and you know, a lack of intelligence, and that I so viscerally felt. And when I was in third grade specifically, but most of my education was that way. So yeah, so I started teaching, and you know, first outdoor ed was my first love. And yeah, and now I teach Spanish, and I truly love the fact that we can almost teach anything really, and just build those kids up and let them know that we can provide a safe place. So cool. So on a similar note, a little bit about World Language Initiative. Both Becky and I work for the World Language Initiative Montana. I was the first teacher they hired back in, like, I think it was like 2012, I think. Before we got our nonprofit status, before we were even World Language Initiative. I think we were first called Friends of World Language, FWL. So yeah, so Becky teaches for us now, thankfully, and I teach my adult and my elementary ed classes through there. And our goal is to make language and culture education available for all Montanans. And we're actually going to start, I think we might change that mission, because with people like Becky teaching in New Hampshire, we get to offer it to, you know, anybody, anywhere, really, because of thankfully the internet has allowed that for us. So some updates for us is I wanted to mention them because they're letting us use their Zoom account. So we wanted to give a little homage to them, and they're a great organization, very scrappy, very small, and spread the word, because we're trying to help people to know that we offer free English classes to new arrivals to this country. We also that's grant funded. And then we also are starting a new program in Big Sky, Montana, where there's a ton of Spanish speakers. We will be teaching Spanish and English there. And additionally, we offer summer camps, all kinds of really great things. And so help us spread the word about World Language Initiative. We're really proud of the work we're doing. And here is just some information about us. 210 adult students served in 1 year. Total students served was 609, which for us is a big deal. We had 25 junior and teaching assistants. We have 15 language coaches. We offered 46 language classes in 7 different languages. So Arabic, French, German, Spanish, Mandarin. I think we just added Japanese. So we have a lot of options. Okay, so awesome. Take it away, Becky.
Woohoo. So the goals of today's presentation, Shannon, is to be able to explain student accommodations and why they're so valuable, implement 2 new strategies in your next language class, and also to be able to support your colleagues in trying something new for the sake of the students, because we know switching things up can sometimes be a little challenging, especially if you're working with a larger department. So to be able to support others in some taking what may feel like a little risk. So.
Awesome.
Oh, and we just loved this. It popped up just before we were going to be presenting, and we just thought it was really fitting. So knowing that we can be loved exactly as we are gives us all the best opportunity for growing into the healthiest of people. And this is why I am a teacher. I feel that by creating a loving and accepting place for all of my students and allowing them to explore the aspects of their identity, which undoubtedly comes up in a language class, gives us the opportunity to really create a more connected world. And a healthy community. So we just wanted to pop that in there.
Awesome. Okay, so share in the chat box. I know it's just you, Shannon, but we're glad you're here. What's an accommodation that you like to use in your classes? I know teachers know a lot about accommodations. We always get training on it, right? And so maybe you have something that's gold that you love using over and over again that has really served you or your students, or both, hopefully both. Yeah.
Can I just say it instead of?
That's way better. Yeah.
So actually I came into this one because I really want to learn from you guys, because I'm really struggling this year. with the amount of accommodations that I have in my class.
Yeah.
I have everything. Like I have one class that has 8 IEPs in it. I have a class of 23. There's 8 of them have IEPs,
So
and
weird.
half of them are like, separate seating area, and it's like that doesn't happen in my class. Like, I mean, because it's a tiny little class, we're on top of each other and stuff like that, and like separate testing and stuff like that. And I think what I end up doing a lot is I look at the accommodations and I try to make the class norm more like what the accommodations are, because it's just, well, for me it's just easier.
Yeah.
But also I know that any accommodation I give to any kid is going to be helpful for any kid anyhow. So
You just made my heart sing by saying that. Thank you. That is an incredible thing it's brave to do that, because a lot of teachers are like, well, then I'm giving everyone else a leg up, blah, blah, blah. So being able to say it's going to help everyone, that just makes me so happy.
So, I mean, that's the thing, is like accommodations aren't a leg up. It's just a leveling of playing ground, of the playing field. So, I mean, it's not a modification. I mean, that would be different. So, but yeah, like I said, I've been really struggling with trying to meet the individual accommodations of the kids when I'm trying to go with the whole class, and I try, like I said, I try to make the whole class, a level playing field as much as I can, with doing things. And part of it is, I have like severe ADD. And so if I'm getting bored, I like to switch anyhow. So, so I tell the kids, I'm like, I should probably have these accommodations too. So I'm going to teach that way anyhow. So.
Beautiful.
That's
what would you
awesome.
say are some of the most salient challenges your students face that have allowed for them to have those accommodations by the school? What are the different things that they're facing?
There's a lot of reading challenges. Kids have a lot of challenge with trying to, decipher the different reading and stuff like that, trying to write anything longer in a sentence, things like that. I have several that have like behavioral issues that stem from different things that are coming from home or coming from life in general. So they need frequent breaks. They need to be able to express themselves in different ways, and stuff like that. A lot of test anxiety kids, just different things like that seem to kind of peek into my mind right now. So.
Yeah, and middle school is such a challenging time as well for our students. A pandemic fallout aside, it's just a tough time to be a kid when you're that age. So the test anxiety is a big part of it, because now grades really seem to matter compared to when we were in elementary school. And for some kids, it was just like, but yeah.
Middle school teacher who happens to teach Spanish. So it's middle school first, and then hopefully they'll learn some Spanish too.
Yes. The first time oh yeah, go ahead.
No, you're good. I just worry that, like, I'm wondering in your situation, I know for me, like the when they've gotten pulled out, they're oftentimes like not told to continue in a world language because they need so many accommodations, or they're worried about their core classes, right? Is that happening for you? Because I've had that happen to me, and I'm like, no, I was the kind of kid that needed Spanish, and in my case, right? So I'm wondering if that's happening in your world.
Testing going on, and as they do their testing, they'll pull them for extra tutoring in different classes and stuff like that. There's been a couple of times this year though that I've advocated for the student and said, you know what, this is the only class they like. So pull them out of some other elective. It's like, this is the class that they want to come to. I'm like, right. I know they're in my class, and I know that they struggle, but they try. And so trying, I want them in my class. So
that's great.
I know Kristen is going to touch on how fonts can be really helpful for students that have difficulty reading. So that might be something that you'll be able to really take away from today. And we'll also be talking about using Write and Discuss as a really strong tool for helping to develop those reading and writing skills, and helping to build what's the word I'm looking. So when we get to that part, if you've not done Write and Discuss, we can really delve into that, because I think that would be a really, really helpful way to support, if that's a big part of your accommodations that you're needing to give students. Helping to build that will be fantastic.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Well, so I do this thing where I set a timer and to get us moving more frequently because I have ADHD and I need to move. So okay, I just want you each to like stretch, move your body a little bit to the left, to the right, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. And I do this in Spanish. I say adelante, al revés. If you have a better way to say it, let me know. A la izquierda, a la derecha. Yeah. And then sometimes I'll add in like a little like twist to get my spine moving. I just, yeah.
Hida.
Yeah. Right. So I feel like for me as a student, you know, I flipped to the slide because I knew the timer was going to go off, but engaging all learning styles often is, you know, really important, right? I know, you both know this. We want movement is the top of my list because, you know, so many studies have shown that getting our bodies moving helps us to reset our brain, helps to make something refresh, you know, inside of us. And we can teach really like useful language that way, just like to the left, to the right, you know, like in Spanish or whatever language we're teaching. So I try to incorporate these every day, at least the first 5: movement, listening, reading, writing, speaking. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but I try to add in some art. I try to give them venues to express themselves, and make, you know, adding those songs in. The kids that are musical, you know, just love it. So that's what our whole presentation is really about, is like bringing in as many of those learning styles on a daily basis, you know, doing dance, cooking, anything you can do to engage the 5 senses, to engage all
Bring in
those learning.
Play-Doh and make little things and talk about them, you know,
Yeah.
that's hands-on stuff.
All
Kindergarten.
the things. Yeah, totally. So, another thing that I really try to do, and I was going to take this slide out, but Becky and I talked about it. It's like, I feel like I always need this reminder to go slow, right? And go slower than I think. Because when I get excited and I speak too fast, I lose them. Almost every time I lose the slow processors, and I often lose the kids that are processing at a faster rate too. So I always try to go slow and clear. That to me has been a huge, like when I remember to do it. I have a kid in my room. I do student jobs. They're supposed to remind me to go slower. And I check their comprehension often with very simple questions. Yes, no, entiendo, no entiendo, you know, cierto, falso, whatever. And it helps. It helps me to get that feedback and know if they're with me. Yeah. So, and then something I'm really passionate about because I'm dyslexic is my 2 favorite fonts right now. These are apparently, according to the study that's linked up here. This is, I think it was from the University of Michigan. They found these fonts to be like your traditional fonts to be the best. But I in Google use this one for everything. I love it. It's like very pleasing to me visually. Maybe it's because I have dyslexia, maybe not, but I use it for everything. In Canva, the one we're using right now is I'm gonna mess that up, but I love that one. Yeah, thank you. And then Open Dyslexic and Canva is a really good one, and Komodo Stamp is a good one. So using those often is really important so that you can guarantee, or more likely to guarantee, right, that your students are with you and they're able to process the language with you, right? So
Can I add on that real quick?
please do.
One of the things that I think as teachers too, that we get carried away with is trying to make things look beautiful.
Right.
And most of our students can't read cursive anymore. And that was something that was really shocking to me when I was teaching, how few students can understand cursive. So sticking to basic fonts, I love to use Comic Sans because the kids laugh all the time because they think it's really lame. But I found that Comic Sans is a great one to use just because the comedic relief that I tend to get from my students, but also it is a clearer font and it's much easier for students with reading difficulties.
It totally is. And I can tell you again, as someone that's dyslexic, it's way more pleasing to me. And I didn't think it made that big of a difference, but it does. It does. So, And I'm going to put, I forgot, I meant to do this at the beginning. I'm going to put the presentation in the chat. So if you want to dive into these resources later, yeah, they're there for you. So I love getting students moving, like I said before. I think they're just the best. That I've linked 2 things here. One is from La Maestra Loca, I believe, and the other one is I can't remember. Maybe it's been a while since I've used this, but or used this slide, I should say. So yeah, this is La Maestra Loca. She has so many great ideas that help you to infuse some really good fun, team building, new language in that doesn't normally reach, your classes for whatever reason. And I just find her to be so inspiring. Yeah, brain breaks are my jam. And I try to do them often, as often as possible. And yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, I'm always, when I'm doing brain breaks, I feel sometimes like I have to make them very language infused, and you can, but also just being able to get up and move and do something different, especially for students with ADHD, ADD, or any other type of attention issue. And for anxiety, you're getting that stress moving out of your body. So when I see all of my students just kind of staring off into space, I'm like, all right, levántate, baila. And my students get really embarrassed, but it's wonderful.
It's perfect. Yeah. The other one is the link at the top is from Musicuentos, and she does really good brain breaks that are really simple. So and she has videos, and so you can just add those in whenever. So yeah, Musicuentos and La Maestra Loca are linked in that presentation. So and then let's see. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What do you want to say?
I was just going to say, we lost your screen share.
No, thank you for telling me. I sometimes I can't like get back to the thing. It's like we were talking about how our adult students struggle with that.
Yeah.
So here's another brain break on that note. Okay, so this one, I put this image here because it deals with anxiety and your immune system. So this is something I learned. I do Qigong every Saturday, and Qigong is the ancient practice of like tapping into your acupressure points all over your body that help you to heal, self-heal. I'm a huge fan of it for so many reasons, but this is one of my favorites. So I do it really hard because I like it. It feels good to me. And when I'm having like an anxiety thing pop up for me, I do this. I just do one hand. So we can do that right now. Left hand or right hand. I try to do a little bit with each. And I just breathe, inhala, exhala. Inhala, exhala. And then you can also do the gorilla thing. Apparently when gorillas do this, I do them at the same time. But when gorillas are doing that, they're clearing out their lungs, and it makes them stronger and more potent because these are your acupressure points right here under your collarbone. So this is one of my favorite brain breaks, and kids love it. And I'm like, act like a gorilla. And it like calms my anxiety, it calms them down, and it builds our immune system. So during COVID, we did a lot of this.
I'm going to do this with my adult students now more.
It's the best. I love it. Yeah. So I don't always, but I try to inhale when I'm making contact. So. And that's a Qigong thing. So, and you can like feel it like stirring things up in your lungs. So anyway, it's really good. Thanks for doing a brain break with me.
Yay. So as I said at the beginning, I really focus on anxiety disorders because I myself have generalized anxiety disorder, which means I have a constant anxiety in my head all of the time. And for me, that internal anxiety is negative self-talk. I'm always worried about things. I'm replaying stuff that has happened throughout the day, or I'll randomly think about something that happened 10 years ago and feel incredible guilt about something silly that I said to someone. So I'm constantly battling these negative thoughts in my head, and other little things will trigger the anxiety. And so I'm in my head, I'm constantly trying to calm. And that's how a lot of our students who are diagnosed with different types of anxiety disorders feel. Common anxiety disorders include panic disorder. OCD has also been it's been moved into the anxiety disorder according to the DSM-5. I believe that's what that book of stuff is called. Post-traumatic stress disorder, social anxiety disorder, separation anxiety disorder, agoraphobia. Maybe someone has a specific phobia about presenting in front of people. They have a specific phobia of heights, or maybe it's something that to us seems really strange. Maybe they have a sensory issue, so things that are kind of wet or things that have a weird sound can really be triggering for a lot of people. So anxiety isn't just that anxiety being worried. There's a whole slew of different things that fall under anxiety disorder. So if you have a student that is diagnosed with anxiety, it's important to know what kind of anxiety disorder they have.
Awesome.
And I love to recommend this book. So if you are looking to learn more about why do we have these things? Why do we feel anxiety? Why do we feel depression? Why do we go through all of these different mental, emotional, and physical manifestations of these bad feelings? This book is really, really good. Good Reasons for Bad Feelings. There's also a great interview on Innovation Hub from NPR, so I strongly recommend checking that out. If you don't have it in you to read the whole book, the interview is fantastic, but it helps talk about in evolutionary terms, why do we have these as a species, this condition of going into depression, this condition of going into an anxiety episode. So I felt like this was very validating for me and helped me to better understand myself and my students as well. So I always strongly recommend checking that out if you want to learn a little bit more about anxiety and depression.
I do. I need to read the book.
It's good. It's very good. Very approachable. So I wanted to ask, how do you see a student who has anxiety in your classroom? How does that manifest? What are the things that you notice that they're doing, or things that you're like, oh yeah, that's that student that has anxiety? What are the things that you see?
I would say that I notice that kids will act out. Like that's one way that you'll see it, is that they're going to act out whenever they're feeling stressed. When they're feeling like they're being overwhelmed or anything like that. Some of them will act out. Some of them will shut completely down, do the exact opposite. And I mean, just head down, no visual contact or anything like that. Some will do the I can't. They become, I call them the captain of can't. So they're like, oh, I can't. I'm like, nope, that's not a word in this class. Can't do that. But they become, feeling of helplessness, just, oh, I can't do this. That seems to be the three that I see the most of.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to move on to the next slide here, these are some of the things that a lot of people report seeing when they see a student with anxiety. So this irritability, the lack of self-control, like you're saying, like they lash out about something, or they explode, or they completely close into themselves. They avoid things. They say that they feel numb, or that a lot of people feel dizzy. And again, it's this mental exercise that someone with anxiety is doing, but there's nowhere to go with that energy, that stress. And so you get really stuck. And if you want to move on to the next slide, the thing is that this all is a self-perpetuate or self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you're a student who is feeling anxious or feeling stressed or feeling depressed, you start to do other things. You start to become obsessive on the internet, or maybe you're constantly eating or drinking, or for some of our students, I know you teach middle schoolers, but drug use starts in middle school. So they try to find ways to self-medicate so that they're able to at least put on a mask that they're okay. Lack of concentration. They're constantly on their phones. They're not able to sleep at night, so they're sleeping in your class. Overscheduling or overworking is something that's very common with adults who have anxiety disorders. And that irritability, like you said, are really big things. But these students, they exhibit these manifestations of their anxiety, and then their grades start to slip. They start to be seen as a problem student. And so then they internalize all of this stuff that in their head they've already been replaying. I'm not a good student. I'm not able to follow instructions. I'm not able to control my feelings. I'm not able, and it just becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy that sometimes these students get really locked into. And so Kristen and I work really hard to come up with different things to support our students when they are experiencing these. So what is the prevalence of adolescent anxiety? Well, studies vary very greatly, diagnosed versus exhibiting. So some people who have an anxiety disorder are not yet diagnosed. Also, experiencing anxiety does not mean you have a disorder. It's a disorder when it starts to interrupt your ability to function, your ability to sleep, your ability to eat, etc. And the lack of diagnosis does not mean that there's not a disorder, because a lot of our students do not get the correct support to be diagnosed if they have an anxiety disorder. All recent studies are showing, as I'm sure you have seen at school, that adolescent anxiety is incredibly on the rise. And this is why I feel like these topics are so important to talk about. You can move on to the next one. So we are going to talk about some really tough stuff. So if you, just as a trigger warning, we're going to be talking about student suicide and violence. So if this is something that's very trigger for you, you're welcome to turn off your camera, get up and go walk, and we can just talk about it and have it recorded. But if you're able to sit for the conversation, we'd also love you to be here too. So just recently, if you are following the news, the CDC just last month, I believe, put out a new study that took data from 2021. So it takes a while for all of that to be condensed and evaluated and put into writing. But for me, reading the results were really scary. So the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is a survey that's put out by the CDC. They survey high school students to find out what's going on and ways that they can help prevent any negative stuff that goes on, specifically in schools. So the study found that 30%, which is 1 in 3, of high school students seriously considered attempting suicide in the last year. 18%, or 1 in 5, experienced sexual violence in the past year. These are high school students. 14%, which again, if you're looking at your class of 20, 25 students, that's at least 2, maybe more. Were forced to have sex in the last year. Over 50% of your LGBTQ students reported poor mental health. 1 in 5, or 22%, have attempted suicide in the past year. And while all of this is not completely related to anxiety, the heightened anxiety that our students are facing as a result of a lot of different factors, especially with COVID, has strongly increased these really scary things. I myself have lost a student. My neighbor's daughter lost a friend. Kristen and I were talking that she just recently lost a student as well. And so I'm always trying in my language class to build a safe community, grow student confidence and self-esteem, and celebrate what makes us unique. And the accommodations and things that we do in our classroom really do try to build that. So we're going to talk about a couple of our favorite things. So Shannon, I hope that this is helpful for you in your classes. You can go right on to the next one there, Kristen. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to do another quick brain break.
This one's hard.
Yeah, this one took me a long time to get. So it's called Chasing Twos. And for me, I'm dyslexic. So this one was really hard for me, but I feel like it's worth, putting the time in. And I always try to normalize that for students, that like these things I'm going to be teaching you are difficult, but just hang in there. If I can learn it, you can too. So it's apparently there are 2 ways in the world that people say the number 2. So they either go like this or they go like this. Supposedly. I'm not sure. I learned this from Annabelle, the La Maestra Loca. So you chase the 2s and then you switch. Chase the 2s. It's so hard. It took me a long time to get this one. And if I overthink it, I mess it up. So I'm trying not to overthink it. But
I can see how much we're laughing just trying to do it. Like it brings down that stress. It's so good.
It does. And I always say it in Spanish, like estamos persiguiendo los dos. And that's, yeah. And I have a student who's seen Inglourious Bastards, but that Quentin Tarantino movie, I guess. And he is like, there's like they focus on the threes. So you could do that if you wanted. There's like
Oh.
three. Yeah, I don't know that one, but in Inglorious Bastards, that's how they figure out I'm messing it up, but one of the kids knew in my class knew that. And he was like, oh, well, could we try the threes? And I was like, I'm going to mess that one up and you're going to see how horrible I am at this, but that's okay. I like normalizing it for them. I like normalizing it.
They like seeing us mess up.
They do.
So the following activities are, in my opinion, perfect for building that individual self-esteem and community. And again, they take into account a lot of the common accommodations for students. So things that incorporate lots of different learning styles. And so we can go on to the next one. All right, go right ahead.
You're talking about this one, aren't you? Or am I?
We can I'll take it from there. So our three favorite things that we do in our classes are: one, special person interviews. Have you ever done that, Shannon? Perfect. Okay, so you know special person interviews, personal surveys. Have you used personal surveys in your classes? Fantastic. Look at this. He's a pro. And card talk. Have you used card talk too? Ooh, okay, perfect. That's the one I pulled out that I'll be going over a little bit. And Kristen also uses student jobs in her classroom, as she has talked about. I find it really difficult to keep track of. So I love that you guys do it. I think it's fantastic. Kristen also said that one of her things that she likes to do is have students share good news at the start of class and then repeating it in the target language. And again, I think that's so crucial because we don't want to restrict our students' ability to express themselves. So allowing them to use L1 when necessary, or just allowing them to simply use it when they feel uncomfortable. I tell my students, as long as they're responding and showing that they're paying attention, even if it's an L1, that's fine by me. I don't care. Because by demonstrating comprehension, you're showing me that you are learning and that your brain is understanding Spanish. That's amazing. So card talk, you can do anything. Do you have to stick to a textbook, or do you have more of a thematic curriculum? What does your curriculum look like, Shannon?
We have a thematic curriculum. We don't have a textbook. We created basically all the stuff that we use and then pull in extra stuff as we find it.
Awesome. So this fits perfectly in that situation. If you do have to stick to a textbook, for those who are watching the recording, you can also use Card Talk to introduce things. But if you are starting off with the year by talking about things we like and getting to know each other, have them draw their favorite activity on a piece of paper. You can collect all of those pieces of paper and then use them maybe throughout the week or throughout the month or whatever. But just holding one up and using it to talk about. So for example, let's just say a student drew a picture of a basketball. And then I'm like, ooh, ¿qué es esto? And I have a whole like going over questions and things. And then this elicits all of these conversations that reiterate the same word basketball, but they also hit all of these high frequency structures, such as do you like, why do you like, where do you play, who's your favorite player, would you like? So now we can start getting into the conditional, not limiting our grammatical structures, but limiting the vocabulary we're using, right? And again, this really helps our students who have a hard time with processing because they're hearing the same stuff over and over and over. You can build in days of the week into these types of activities. Did you play on Saturday? Did you play on Sunday? And then taking it another step, once we've gone through all of these questions with our students, you can go to the next slide. Now look at all of this really cool stuff that came out of a single picture of a basketball. So now at the end of the class, I can be like, hoy aprendemos sobre Jenna, hablamos sobre Jenna, y a Jenna le gusta jugar basketball. And I can do a nice summary, again, reiterating things that students heard throughout that class all about this basketball. And for those teachers who have thematic units or have things that they need to touch on based on their curricula, you can come up with questions that fit each unit, and then use those pictures that were student created to generate conversation. I find this super great with my adult learners too. Just asking, what did you do over the weekend? And they draw a quick picture and they show the camera, because I teach virtually right now. And it gives everybody a concrete understanding because they see the picture, they know what it is. They might not know how to talk about it yet, but I guide them through that conversation. And you can keep going. This one picture of a basketball. Now we can start talking about what color is it? Who else plays. So we're starting to create that community. Does anyone play on the basketball team at school? And we can get all excited and cheer the basketball team on and maybe learn a couple of chants that get the kids all excited. And then it rolls into what other sports do students play. And so this one picture of a basketball was super helpful. And again, if you have 30 students, now you have 30 pieces of paper. If you have 4 or 5 students who draw the same thing, group them together. So then on the next day, you're like, hay 5 papeles con un, I don't know, whatever, con un caballo, right? And then you're talking about 5 students who all enjoy horses, and you can start talking about who are they? Raise your hand. All of that comprehensive communication is really, really awesome for our kiddos. And again, across the spectrum, depending on their accommodations, giving them the visual, lots of repetition, creating, we'll talk about anchor charts here in a moment too, really helps to ground that conversation. Yeah.
So is this something you would do on a daily basis? Like, would they all draw something each day, or is it on like the beginning of the week, or?
It depends on how your classes are structured. I only see my students once a week. And then when I was teaching at high school, I saw them every other day. And then before that, I was seeing my students every day. So every teaching situation has been different for me. When I see my students every day, I usually do one a week. So we'll do, where's your favorite place in town? And the kids will all draw a picture, and then we'll talk about all the different places in town when we're in that unit. Or if we're talking about travel, where would you like to travel to? Or what's something you need to make sure you bring in your suitcase, or whatever is the vocabulary that I need to kind of hit. I try to come up with a question that will fit that. With my adult learners, I just do usually one about something about themselves, and then I hit one a class, so we can do a nice deep dive into one. So if you have 30 students, sometimes you can stretch this out for a whole month. And again, it's not your whole class, it's a small chunk of it where you're like, oh, now we're going to talk about sports, and you bring up your pictures.
You know, I have a question. I love doing card talk, but I always get stuck, and maybe you've found a way around this, but like I always feel bad if I don't get to all the kids. And I get like dragged down into it. It doesn't feel as like it feels like drudgery. And so I'm wondering, like, sometimes I struggle with it. And thankfully this year I have like 16 kids in a class, so it's easier to go through.
Yes.
But when you have those bigger classes, like, what do how do you work through that mentally?
Yeah, I celebrate them. I make it a really big deal at the beginning of each class, and I make the kids super applaud, and we do a huge thing when we pull it out. We're like, oh, and as I said, grouping similar ones. So after I collect them all after our class that we did it in, I group them in a way that seems logical. And most of the time, students will draw similar things, especially when we talk about things we like. That's a really easy one to kind of group them up by. But I find that makes it easier. And if I'm not able to do everybody's, I'll do like one day where I present a whole bunch of them kind of rapid fire. We're like, all right, let's go over these couple, and I'll put them up on the board and we'll do a real quick through them. But that's how I go about doing that. Yeah, I know what you're saying though, because when I first started doing it, it was like I made the whole class about the picture, and that's where it got sticky. Making it like a 10-minute quick activity, I think, was the best way for me.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah, I love card talk. That's the bulk of what I do.
So good. Yeah, so I recommend videoing yourself too when you can. When I try to put the camera just on me, I find that it's really helpful for me to have that as a reference point and go, okay, did I do the accommodations I wanted to today? Did I did I meet that student's needs? Did I call on everyone equally? Did I get, did I meet, all my goals that I wanted to make for the day, right? So it's, to me, I don't always love going back and watching myself, but I do find that kids that either absent or need accommodations, it does help them to go back through it, and having you in video form guide that is better than not having it at all. So I find too that, like, especially during the pandemic, if I had videos of me dancing or singing or cooking or reading or anything, or hand clapping games or whatever, they were like doing them at home with their families. They were more likely to rewatch them if they enjoyed the activity and they were excited to show a friend, right? So I found that it really helped me grow as a teacher, and I find that it helps me to, like, keep the learning happening at home. And I find that parents really appreciate it too, because then they can be a part of the learning if they're interested in learning Spanish. And so I always recommend to people to do that, because it's such a great way for you and the student to just like keep diving into the material and improving.
Yeah, and a really great tool for that, I'm going to share it in the chat, is Cliptomatic. If you have a smartphone, Cliptomatic is great. It's free. You can download it and it auto captions. So you set what language you're speaking and it will auto caption what you're saying in the language, and it limits the video to, I want to say 2 minutes unless you pay for it. So it also makes sure you keep it nice and short. So I go out to my chicken coop and I video myself in the chicken coop talking to my chickens, modeling conversation, right? With the captions, my students find it really engaging and silly. But that I find helpful. And with the videoing, if you video your full class, students love watching stuff on fast speeds. So that also helps students who want to rewatch it, but get through it quickly. For those fast processors, and for our slower processors, then they can go back to those spots in the class and slow it down if they want to watch you re-explain. So I find there's so many tools for those as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect. I'm gonna add that link in there onto that slide. So the daily structure is something that I find is really helpful, especially when providing accommodations. So this is the daily structure that I have used for, gosh, how many years now? 1, 2, 3, 4 years at least. So it's from Tina Harganen, from CI Liftoff. And she also has another, I think her main umbrella business is called the World Language Proficiency Project, I believe. And she made this daily framework, and in the framework are these things that you want to hit in your lesson every day. I don't follow it every day. Oh, I did not want to do this. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen while I pull up.
If you hit use template, I think it'll take you to it, right?
Totally. But I don't need to do that. I don't need to make another template. So yeah, because I've already made it. But basically what I found is that it provides a structure that is really concrete, that helps me to make sure I'm hitting all of the things that I want to hit, right? And so it's very focused on writing and reading, and it's really all the things if you want it to be, but it can be doing reading, writing, listening, and speaking every single day. So you're hitting on all of those in a way that will support your students. So essentially, the framework that I am going to show you is, hold on, let me share my screen. I've got it pulled up here. So essentially, I'm going to go through it kind of quickly because it's pretty involved and it takes time to like, not that one, sorry, that one. Okay, so this is something I made when I was teaching adults, and it works well with kids and adults. And so I love using it. And like I said, I don't use it every day, but this is my goal. And it forces me to put my goal on the board. It forces me to stay to a certain time frame. It provides a lot of predictability for kids that have anxiety. Oh, we're going to do a quick brain break as this loads. Okay. All right. So just tap your head. So there's an acupressure point on the top of your head that is something called like Buddha's 1,000 points or something like that. And it helps you to connect with the universe, and whether you believe in all that or not, but it just helps you to like clear some negative energy that's in your head. And it just like, yeah, it feels kind of good. And like, it's just, yeah. And I find that it calms me, and there's this point on top of your head that you could just rub that too if you want that. And I just like normalizing the fact that it's it's a good way to connect with your inner energy, right? That we all have. So this is a book that I made, and oh sugar, I pulled up the wrong thing. Okay. Well, I'm going to just tell you what it is because I know it's linked there, but I want to make sure that it's, gosh. And you know, what's funny is like when I'm using Zoom, I can't like reach. Are you guys like experts at Zoom? There they are. Okay. Sometimes it like, ooh, yay, somebody's joining us. Okay, so I am actually going to go back here. Okay, so the daily framework I think is really, really important.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome. Awesome. Okay, so essentially this framework, if I can pull it up, where did I put it? Okay,
There.
as you can tell, I have so many things in Canva. No, it's not here. Sugary boom. Okay. I should have pulled it up ahead of time. But essentially what I love about it is it has me start the class by normalizing it and putting up a goal. Like by the end of today, you will be able to blah, blah, blah. And then from there I go into, oh gosh, too many things.
I think I found it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's frustrating that I didn't pull it up ahead of time. But essentially, yeah, so it has me put the goal every day, and then it has me put up the nope. And then it has me put up the I go into a main activity for the day, and then after that I I always guarantee myself some time to do some reading and writing with the kids. Usually that's before the main activity. And then I do some writing and, well, here's one of them. We'll just do this one.
I
made
got it.
a,
You want me
ooh,
to share mine? I just got mine up.
okay.
you
Did
got
you get the template thing?
I have one that I adjusted. So we'll do, here we go. So this is how I do the daily framework. I try to concretely put my lectures. So again, as she said, the daily goal. And reading workshop, I always revisit our write and discuss that we did the previous class. So we'll talk about write and discuss in just a moment. Guided oral input, this is like the short lecture that I give in class. And so I usually do a personal embarrassing story, like the day that I hit a squirrel on the way to school. Or if you have lessons that you have to present to your students, this is a great place to put them in. And I keep them usually maximum 10-15 minutes. Scaffolded oral review. So this is where I ask the student questions just to make sure that they're understanding everything that I had talked about. So who was driving the car? What happened? Who crossed the road? It was a squirrel. Oh no. Was the squirrel alive or was the squirrel dead? Giving them these options so they can help express that. Then we go into the shared writing, which is the write and discuss, which we'll talk about. Then we read what we wrote for our write and discuss. We read it in Spanish, we read it in English, and then I answer any questions the students have. And then lastly, some type of application and assessment. So there's a variety of different things you can do for that. But I typically ask the students to give me 3 true/false questions, and then I use a couple of those as our exit quiz. So that's what I do in my classes almost every day.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, I'll go back to you there.
Cool. Yeah. So I pulled it up finally, and let me get
I'll
that.
share this in the chat.
Yeah. So this the template that I use, I used it with adults, and I found it to be really, and kids, like I said, and I like it because I can plug it in and they know the schedule. So essentially,
It's pretty.
yeah, so I made it all pretty and I like it. And so I would have a password when they walk in, like an idiomatic phrase like they did today. Then we do a brief meditation. Then I state the goal by the end of today, I'll be able to blah, blah, blah. We do reading workshop. Then I do the guided oral input, which is like the meat of the lesson. Like, you know, it could be like Becky's story with the squirrel, or it could be me talking about, you know, Dia de Muertos,
Or it could be where you do your card talk. So you pull out the kids' pictures and be like, all right, today we're going to talk about, because we're talking about things that we like or things around town or food or whatever your thematic unit is. There's your input.
Yep. And then So and then we do a write and discuss, or we do the questions here, then we do a write and discuss, then we do a shared reading where we read what we just wrote up, or, wrote up. And then we do a quick grammar study. Like, what did you notice? What do you want to teach the class? And then I do a quick quiz at the end or something similar. So I can have that formative assessment every day. So I know that they're with me. So yeah, back to that. I find that it's really made a difference in my teaching.
Yeah.
Having that,
And it
having that
helps the
routine.
students that need those different types of input as well to help them learn.
Yeah. And then anchor charts are huge, huge support. Whenever I use those, I find the kids really appreciate the fact that it's that the anchor chart, grounds them in the lesson and helps them to to see exactly where we're headed with the lesson and what language that is, we're going to be focusing on, basically. So at the beginning of the year, and this is linked in the slideshow, at the beginning of the year, we'll start with things like, hace frío, it's cold, or our target language would be like, me gusta, I like, I don't know, me gusta, right? I like or I don't like. And then this is taking forever to load, but it has really concrete language that I try to focus on. For like about a week, I'll focus on this like one piece of language, like these pieces, and then I move on, and they're written here in French, they're written here in Spanish, and then I add, we're trying to make, at some point during the year, we end up making characters and we want them to be realistic. Do they have a big, I'm going to make this a little bigger for you to see. Do they have a big, what are they like on the outside? Are they tall? Are they small? Are they short? Are they, all those words, I'll use in context in developing our stories. And so anchor charts basically are really simple. They don't need to be complex at all. Sometimes I'll just write 5 words that I want them to focus on, like when I was 5, or I loved, or I hated, and was not as convenient as, I might just add those 4. And then the next day or later, a week later, I might add these, right, to make comparisons. So they can be really, really simple, and they just ground you back into the language, so that they know, like, they get that repetition and they get that familiarity before you move on. So, all right. So those are anchor charts. And then the next thing that I love using are graphic organizers. They're really, really critical. Thank you for adding that. That's perfect. This is beautiful. So a graphic organizer.
Oh, I put it on the wrong slide.
Oh, that's an anchor chart. Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, that's not a graphic organizer.
That's
Okay.
my beautiful anchor chart that my middle schoolers made after I think it was 4 weeks of class or 3 weeks of class. I was like, all right, so what are all the different things we've learned so far about how to talk about weather, how to talk about how we're feeling, how to talk about hay un problema whenever there's a problem in our stories, because we write a lot of stories. So this was all stuff that the students generated with just me giving them a little bit of support. And this was something I allowed them to use during their assessments. Like you're saying, a lot of students with their accommodations include things like access to notes. And so I put these up on the wall, and I give every student an individual version so that they have access to that as well. And I love using Rocketbook stuff. I don't know if you've ever heard of Rocketbook. Just put that in the chat, but Rocketbook has a really great feature for teachers. They're these little orange triangles that you can put on the outside of anything, and it scans it beautifully. So this is actually just a big giant piece of paper I had in the front of the classroom. You can see my little magnets on the side there. But when you take a picture on your phone using the Rocketbook app, it just, like, the colors pop and everything looks so cool. And you can make it immediately shareable. It uploads to Google, Google Drive, Google Classroom. Really great tool if you're looking to provide your notes in multiple forms for your students, especially if you have those accommodations necessary. So I love using this.
Nice. Thank you for putting that in. Graphic organizers were what that slide was about, actually. And yeah, no, it's all good. Well, we could change it later. So essentially the things that I love about graphic organizers is that I can get students to process in the language. It gives them something to focus on. They know that they are expected to complete 5 pieces of notes, let's say. And it can be in Spanish or in English in my class. It could be Spanish or in English. It could be in just Spanish. It can be in English. It can be little bits of the language. It can be drawings, a mix of drawings in Spanish and in English. But I always say take 5 pieces of notes at first in the beginning of the year, and then I move up to like 10 pieces of notes. And so as I'm telling a story, they might, use this one, the story map, if I can get it to load, and the graphic organizer will provide a structure where they can add those pieces of notes, and they always create the coolest things, and I'm always blown away. So there's things like story mountains, like here's the climax at the top, and then here's the ending, what's it called? Not the the descending action. I don't know if that's the right word, but essentially it's really helpful for me to assess if they're with me. So a story map is, Tina Harganen said I could share all of this. So thank goodness to her and Curriculum Club and the World Language Proficiency Project. But this is called a story. What's this one called? I always call it a story cake, but I don't think that's what it's called. But she drew these by hand and I love them. They're super simple. You could draw them. Here's the mountain. Like they put the